I see a lot of people interested in the deep web these days, mainly teens. People talking about red doors and many other alternative names to things they think that are real, but haven't seen themselves. People question every day, are these red door events real? Do they really happen? They are very real indeed. Unfortunately, people with sick minds who get off on torture and other abnormal things go searching for these red doors. And when they find them, they dish out great amounts of money just to control the show. The shows are usually hosted by someone from the Middle Eastern portion of the world. It's always a dark-skinned person hosting the show with their faces covered by a cloth or mask. The host always seems to be in a pissed-off, demanding mood, and always seems to be under the influence of some type of drug or booze. I'm going to tell you the experience I had once when going deep into the deep end of the web. Some of you may have heard of it, but can't get there. You can't get there with Tor. Tor is infested with law enforcement. Red doors won't show up on any onion anymore like they used to. The only way you can get to see a red door show is through Shadow Web. And to get to the Shadow Web, you need an anonymous server which is called Skix. It's like the new Tor, but without the law enforcement. The world is a much more cruel place nowadays than the cyber world. As a recently retired FBI agent who specialized in cyber crimes all around the world, I'm here to share a story of what I saw in one of my last cases before I retired. The case was never closed and got passed to the agent who replaced me. This was 4 months ago. I was working on a case that had been opened up through an anonymous complaint we received online. The complaint was lengthy and in detail described and mentioned many acts of torture beyond what I had seen in my time with the agency. The tipster had sent screenshots of what he or she had seen one night while digging deep into the deep web. They explained how they had been a regular on the deep web, but how everything was dying out due to LE. That they wanted to dig deeper. So they found the Shadow Web. The process of becoming a member of the Shadow Web was lengthy. The person claimed it took them up to 2 weeks before they were granted access after paying. Finally, the email they were expecting came in and they were granted access after installing Skix. This was the new software/program that would allow them to access the Shadow Web servers. Little did they know what they were getting themselves into. I won't go into detail as to what they mentioned in the report because it is still under investigation due to the person being murdered in their own home. This is where I will mention my experience as part of my personal investigation. I was given a link to the Shadow Web by the recently deceased. With permission from the big head, I was able to sit down and proceed. I took the security precautions and paid the fee. It took the Shadow Web admin 2 days to send the email allowing me access. In the email, they prompted me to join as many as 4 live sessions that were going on throughout the week. One of them was called Sharkbait, another was called Shit Cereal, and the other 2 are too gross to mention. The Shadow Web entrance that I was given was a portal to about 10 other websites through the Shadow Web. The websites didn't have names. They were named by numbers in a 1 to 10 list. There were about 100 other websites on the bottom, but mainly were all under construction. On the main page, it showed the times and dates of the 4 shows they were going to be broadcasting live on the Shadow Web through a stream. There were archives that began in March of 2015 and ended August 23rd. These archives were a previous live stream that had already happened. I decided to take a look. The one I chose was called Salted Snail. I didn't really know what to expect before clicking it. Judging by the name, I thought there had to be a snail involved. But there wasn't. I clicked the link. It took me to a brown page with an ad and the video behind the ad. The ad started with a clown laughing. He then says, "Not so fast. You have to go through me before you see what you came to see." He reminded me of a Captain Spaulding. He had severed heads in the background, his face was painted and smeared, his clothes were splattered with bloodstains. In the ad, he encouraged viewers to come join one of the next sessions and pay the fee to see the fun unfold. He mentioned that the viewers were in charge and that they were in control of what happened to the sadistic victims. He then looked closely in the camera and said, "It's going to be one hell of a show." The ad ends. The video is now available to play. The video was titled Salted Snail. The video begins. No credit. It just begins. You see the clown again walking out from behind a white curtain that has what looked like shit or blood smeared all over it with a light behind it. His face is painted and he is naked. He walks out of the curtain chuckling to himself and smiling, scratching his ass and balls. Then he walks toward the camera and shakes his penis in front of the camera, announcing how happy he is to see new members. He then goes on a 30-second rant about law enforcement and how they can't catch him, and how he is in the US, and how he lives next door to a state trooper, thanking all of his friends in China. I'm guessing hackers who keep him anonymous. After his rant, he then says the show is scheduled to stream for 15 minutes, so he has to stick to schedule because he is very, very hungry and hasn't eaten in the past 2 days. He then flashes his ribs at the camera. He wasn't that skinny. He then asks everyone watching if they are ready for the show. A lot of people responding in the side chat box. Yes. He reminds everyone that he is in control for this show, not the viewers. He then chuckles and says, "I'll be right back." He goes behind the curtain. He then rolls out a black barrel and places it in front of the camera. He walks around the barrel, knocking all around it with his fists, as if knocking on a door. He then kicks it hard with his heel. You can hear something in the barrel. He then grabs what seems like a flathead screwdriver and pries it open. You can see a head full of hair as the lid opens. A girl, sitting there, alive. He then yells at her in Chinese to stand up. She can barely stand. Her body is so soggy from what I assume was water that she was in. He then looks at the camera and says, "Doesn't she look delicious? Delicious as cake." The girl had her hands tied behind her back, and her mouth was bound with multiple layers of cloth. She looked too weak to scream, too weak to escape or even attempt. She just stood there, from what seems to be like if she was accepting her death. Then the clown went behind the curtain and came back out with a knife and a razor. He got in front of the camera and said, "I love me some Chinese food. It's dinner time." The girl then turned to him and looked at him, and he nodded at her and said, "Yes, yes, it's time." Her eyes opened wide. She tried to scream but couldn't. He then teased her, poking at her with the knife. She began to bleed instantly from the poking. She was extremely soggy. Then he showed off the little razor blade and proceeded to cut little squares on her shoulder as if cutting a cake piece. Pretty soon he was at the other shoulder, then her chest, breast, and stomach. The scene was extremely gorish and violent, almost as if filleting a fish. By the time he was finished with her body, he had a plate filled with her skin and tissues. What seemed like a plate of soggy skin. The girl was still alive. Her body looked like it had been eaten by piranhas. The only thing remaining were her breasts and her face and hair. He then took the plate behind the curtain and brought back out another plate. He looks at the camera and says, "Well, look at that. Doesn't she look great? She may have lost a couple pounds, huh?" He then winks at the camera and laughs. He proceeds to cut off the girl's ears and lips. What looks now like a mutilated body that is still alive left me wondering what he had done to other people in the past. I was enraged and extremely disturbed by what I had seen. The finale showed the clown coming out of the curtain with 2 containers of salt. He then poured the salt all over her body where her skin had been cut off. He poured a good amount on her ears and lips too. The girl, suffering, hardly moving, but still somewhat standing. He then looks to the camera and says, "I bet you motherfuckers thought I was going to kill her, didn't you? I'm not a murderer." He then pushes her head back down in the barrel and closes the lid, looks at the camera and says, "Stay tuned to the next episode." The camera then shows him putting a white tablecloth over the barrel and placing the plate full of soggy flesh on the barrel. He then lights a candle, grabs a fork, and pulls up a chair. The camera shows him there, eating the flesh while chuckling away and talking to himself. The screen then floods with words. Till the next episode. Over and over and over, with some circus music playing in the background. The camera then dims as it shows him there eating and laughing away. The black screen shows the words offline. I immediately became concerned for the girl. She was Asian. The clown clearly looked American, or sounded American at least. He really resembled Captain Spaulding from The Devil's Rejects or House of a Thousand Corpses. I'm assuming that is what he was trying to be or act like. I contacted my chief and had a personal meeting with him and explained everything about what I had seen. He then laughed and said, "Ah, you've seen him, huh? That evil fucking clown on the internet. He's been around since the late 90s doing these shows. He seems to buy women off the market, then tortures the shit out of them." He then shrugs his shoulders and says, "We don't know who he is or where he's located. The Chinese help keep him anonymous." To me, this was something new. As an agent who dealt with homicides and piracy, I had never encountered nor seen anything like this. I'm now retired and thought I would share this story with Reddit. Everyone should know. The deep web is deep and free, but the shadow web, that is something you don't want to go to. Beware.